Last night, Jimmy Kimmel Live erupted into chaos as host Jimmy Kimmel clashed with Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary ever. A fiery debate spiraled into a viral showdown, leaving Kimmel shaken and Leavitt unyielding. Here's the story. The stage was set for a blockbuster episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live. The audience buzzed with anticipation as Jimmy Kimmel, known for his sharp wit and liberal leanings, welcomed Karoline Leavitt, the 28-year-old firebrand serving as White House press secretary under President Donald Trump's second term. Leavitt, a staunch defender of the administration, had a reputation for cool-headed confidence in the face of tough questions. Kimmel, on the other hand, was primed to take swings, eager to land punches on what he saw as the Trump administration's vulnerabilities. From the moment Leavitt stepped onto the brightly lit stage, the tension was palpable. The crowd, a mix of Kimmel loyalists and curious onlookers, sensed a storm brewing. Kimmel kicked things off with his signature smirk, leaning back in his chair. "So, Karoline, you're out here defending a guy who's been called everything from a genius to a dictator. How do you sleep at night?" The audience chuckled, but Leavitt didn't flinch. Her smile was steady, her posture relaxed. "Jimmy, I sleep just fine knowing I'm defending a president who's fighting for the American people against a media that twists the truth," she replied, her voice calm but pointed. The crowd murmured, some clapping, others shifting uncomfortably. Kimmel raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting such a direct jab. He leaned forward, ready to escalate. The first few minutes were a verbal sparring match. Kimmel prodded Leavitt on Trump's policies, from border security to tax cuts, framing them as divisive or reckless. Leavitt countered with precision, citing job growth numbers and declining crime rates in key cities. "The data doesn't lie, Jimmy, even if some folks in your chair like to spin it," she said, her tone polite but firm. The audience was hooked, their reactions swinging between cheers and gasps. Kimmel, sensing the crowd's energy, decided to pivot to something more personal. He wanted to rattle her. "Let's talk about the Trump family," Kimmel said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Melania Trump, stuck in what some call a hostage situation of a marriage. I mean, come on, Karoline, you can't defend that, right?" The audience erupted in laughter, but the mood shifted as Leavitt's expression hardened. She sat up straighter, her eyes locked on Kimmel. "Jimmy, that's low, even for you," she said, her voice steady but laced with steel. "Melania Trump is a strong, independent woman, and you'd never say that about a Democratic First Lady. Why is it okay to attack her?" The crowd went silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Kimmel blinked, caught off guard, but he wasn't ready to back down. He doubled down, leaning into the attack. "Oh, come on, Karoline, it's a joke. You're telling me everything's rosy in Trump world? The guy's got more scandals than my writers have punchlines." The audience laughed again, but it was nervous now, sensing the conversation veering into dangerous territory. Leavitt didn't smile. "Jokes are fine, Jimmy, but you're not joking. You're pushing a narrative to tear down a family and a presidency because it doesn't fit your agenda," she said, her voice rising slightly but still controlled. The crowd gasped, some clapping for her boldness. Kimmel's smirk faded, his eyes narrowing. He wasn't used to guests pushing back this hard, and it showed. The tension crackled as the segment neared its first break. Kimmel tried to regain control, tossing out a quip about Trump's social media habits, but Leavitt wasn't having it. "You want to talk about Truth Social? Let's talk about how the mainstream media buries stories that don't fit their script," she shot back, citing a recent report about alleged bias in network coverage. The audience was on edge, torn between Kimmel's familiar humor and Leavitt's unflinching resolve. As the show cut to a commercial, Kimmel leaned back, visibly rattled, while Leavitt sat poised, ready for round two. The internet was already lighting up with clips, and the confrontation was far from over. The studio lights blazed as Jimmy Kimmel Live returned from commercial, the audience still buzzing from the explosive first segment. Jimmy Kimmel, usually the master of his domain, looked unsettled, his fingers tapping the desk. Across from him, Karoline Leavitt sat composed, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storm brewing. The internet was ablaze with hashtags like Kimmel vs. Leavitt, and viewers at home were glued to their screens, sensing this was no ordinary talk show spat. The confrontation was about to escalate, and the stakes felt higher than ever. Kimmel, determined to reclaim the narrative, leaned forward with a forced grin. "All right, Karoline, you're out here calling out the media. But let's be real. Your boss isn't exactly a beacon of truth, is he? I mean, the guy's got a rap sheet of lies longer than my monologue." The audience laughed, but it was uneasy, their eyes darting to Leavitt for her response. She didn't miss a beat. "Jimmy, if you want to talk about truth, let's start with your show. How many times have you cherry-picked clips to make conservatives look bad?" she said, her voice steady but sharp. The crowd gasped, some cheering, others murmuring in shock. Kimmel's grin faltered, his eyes flashing with irritation. He wasn't backing down. "Cherry-picking? That's rich coming from the Trump camp. You guys wrote the book on spin," Kimmel shot back, his tone edging into aggression. He leaned closer, his voice rising. "Come on, Karoline, admit it. You're just here to polish a tarnished presidency." The audience oohed, sensing blood in the water. But Leavitt remained unflappable, her expression cool. "I'm here to defend the American people from a media that's more interested in clicks than facts," she replied, her words measured but cutting. "You're not exposing anything, Jimmy. You're just playing to your crowd." The studio erupted, split between applause and stunned silence. Kimmel's face tightened, his patience fraying. He pivoted to a hotter button. "Let's talk about January 6th, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Your guy incited a riot, and you're still out here caping for him. How do you justify that?" The audience leaned in, the air thick with anticipation. Leavitt's eyes narrowed slightly, but her composure held. "Jimmy, you know as well as I do that the narrative around January 6th has been weaponized to vilify millions of Americans who just wanted their voices heard," she said, her tone firm. "President Trump called for peace, and you can check the transcripts. But I guess that doesn't make for good TV." The crowd roared, some in support, others in disbelief. Kimmel's jaw clenched, his knuckles whitening on the desk. He snapped back, his voice louder now. "Oh, come on, Karoline, you're dodging. People died, and you're out here rewriting history." His tone was accusatory, almost shouting, and the audience shifted uncomfortably. Leavitt didn't blink. "I'm not rewriting anything, Jimmy. I'm stating facts. You're the one turning a complex day into a soundbite," she said, her voice rising just enough to match his intensity. The exchange was electric, each word a spark threatening to ignite the stage. Kimmel, visibly shaken, tried to pivot to humor. "You're good, Karoline, I'll give you that. But you're still defending a guy who'd probably fire you on truth. Social tomorrow." The joke landed flat, the audience too gripped by the tension to laugh. Leavitt seized the moment. "You want to talk about loyalty, Jimmy? Let's talk about how you and your network push divisive stories to keep people angry. That's not journalism. That's manipulation." The crowd erupted again, the divide in the room palpable. Kimmel's eyes widened, his composure cracking. He leaned back, trying to mask his frustration with a chuckle, but it was clear he was rattled. "You're tough, Karoline, but you're on the wrong side of history," he said, his voice tight. Leavitt smiled faintly. "History's written by the victors, Jimmy. And we're not done fighting." The audience was on its feet, the energy chaotic. As the segment neared its close, Kimmel's producer signaled to wrap up, but the host's next move would push things over the edge. The Jimmy Kimmel Live studio was a pressure cooker, the audience still reeling from Karoline Leavitt's bold takedown. Jimmy Kimmel, His face flushed, gripped the edge of his desk, caught between his producer's frantic signals to cool it and his own urge to reclaim control. The crowd's energy was split, half cheering Leavitt's defiance, half loyal to Kimmel's brand of biting humor. Social media was exploding, with clips of the clash racking up millions of views. Leavitt sat poised, her calm demeanor a silent challenge to Kimmel's unraveling cool. The host's next move was about to send the confrontation into uncharted territory. Kimmel forced a laugh, but it was brittle, his eyes locked on Leavitt. "You're quite the fighter, Karoline, but let's cut through the spin. Your boss, Trump, he's out there calling the press the enemy of the people. You're okay with that? Trashing the First Amendment?" His voice was sharp, accusatory, and the audience leaned in, sensing a trap. Leavitt didn't hesitate. "Jimmy, the First Amendment protects free speech, not the right to mislead millions with half-truths," she said, her tone steady but edged with fire. "When the press buries stories or twists facts to fit an agenda, that's not journalism. That's propaganda." The crowd erupted, some shouting in support, others jeering. Kimmel's smile vanished, his frustration boiling over. He slammed his hand on the desk, startling the audience. "Propaganda? You're calling me a propagandist? That's bold for someone dodging every question I throw." His voice was loud, aggressive, and the room went quiet, the tension suffocating. Leavitt's eyes narrowed, but her composure held. "I'm not dodging, Jimmy. I'm answering. You just don't like the answers because they don't fit your script," she replied, her voice calm but piercing. The audience gasped, some clapping, others murmuring in disbelief. Kimmel's face reddened, his control slipping further. He leaned forward, pointing at her. "You're out here defending a guy who'd rather tweet than govern. You can't seriously believe he's good for America." The accusation hung heavy, and Leavitt seized it. "Jimmy, I believe in a president who fights for the people, not a media that tears them down to score points," she said, her voice rising with conviction. "You mock Trump, but he's out there cutting taxes, securing borders, and bringing jobs back. What are you doing besides making jokes?" The crowd roared, the divide stark. Some chanted Leavitt's name, others booed, but her words landed like a gut punch. Kimmel's eyes widened, his jaw tight. He tried to laugh it off. "Oh, come on, Karoline, you're selling a fantasy. Trump's America is a circus, and you're the ringmaster." But the joke fell flat, the audience too caught up in the raw intensity. Kimmel, now visibly shaken, went for a personal jab. "Let's be real, Karoline. You're young, ambitious. You're hitching your star to a sinking ship. Why not jump off before it's too late?" His tone was patronizing, almost mocking, and the audience shifted uncomfortably. Leavitt's smile was icy. "Jimmy, I'm not here for a career ladder. I'm here for the millions of Americans who feel ignored by people like you," she said, her voice steady but laced with defiance. "You can mock me, but you can't mock their voices." The studio exploded, the applause deafening. Kimmel's producer waved frantically from the sidelines, but the host was too far gone. His ego bruised, he snapped, his voice rising to a near shout. "You're lecturing me about voices? This show gives people a platform and you're just using it to spew talking points." The accusation was harsh, and the audience gasped, sensing the line had been crossed. Leavitt didn't flinch. "A platform? You mean a soapbox for your agenda?" she shot back, her calm demeanor now edged with righteous anger. "You invited me here to ambush me, but I'm not backing down." The crowd was on its feet, the energy chaotic. Kimmel, his face a mix of fury and embarrassment, opened his mouth to respond, but the producer's signal cut through. The segment was seconds from ending, and Kimmel's next decision would light a match to the powder keg. The Jimmy Kimmel Live studio was a tinderbox, the air thick with tension as the audience stood, torn between cheers and stunned silence. Jimmy Kimmel, his face flushed with a mix of fury and humiliation, glared at Karoline Leavitt, who sat unshaken, her eyes blazing with resolve. Her words, "You invited me here to ambush me, but I'm not backing down," echoed in the room, a challenge Kimmel couldn't ignore. The producer's frantic signals to wrap the segment were ignored as Kimmel, his ego bruised, made a fateful choice. The confrontation was about to explode into a moment that would define the night and reverberate across the internet. Kimmel leaned forward, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you can come on my show and lecture me? You're a mouthpiece. For a con man, and you're out of your depth." The audience gasped, the insult raw and personal. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Leavitt's expression didn't waver, but her voice took on a steely edge. "Jimmy, you're not exposing me. You're exposing yourself. You're so desperate to tear down Trump that you'll bully anyone who stands up to you." The crowd erupted, some shouting in support, others booing, the divide stark. Kimmel's eyes widened, his hands shaking slightly as he gripped the desk. He'd lost control, and he knew it. The host, now fully unhinged, went for the jugular. "You're done here, Karoline. You don't get to hijack my show with your nonsense," he shouted, his voice cracking. He turned to the audience, forcing a smirk. "What do you say, folks? Should we show her the door?" The crowd's reaction was mixed, some cheering, others murmuring in discomfort. Leavitt sat still, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to Kimmel's unraveling. "Jimmy, if you can't handle a real conversation, that's on you," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "I came here to speak for the American people, and I've done that." The audience roared, many standing in applause, their support for her defiance palpable. Kimmel, his face a mask of rage, snapped at the crew. "Cut her mic. We're done." The producer hesitated, but a technician complied, silencing Leavitt's microphone. The move backfired instantly. The audience booed loudly, the sound swelling into a wave of disapproval. Leavitt, unfazed, rose from her seat, her posture regal. She didn't need a mic. "You can silence me here, Jimmy, but you can't silence the truth," she said, her voice carrying over the chaos. The crowd went wild, chanting her name as she walked off the stage, head held high. Kimmel sat frozen, his smirk gone, his eyes darting nervously. The camera caught every second, his embarrassment laid bare. As Leavitt disappeared backstage, the show stumbled to a close. Kimmel tried to salvage it with a weak joke. "Well, that was something, huh?" But the audience wasn't buying it. The energy had shifted. They'd witnessed a rout. Backstage, Leavitt was mobbed by supporters, her poised exit already going viral. By morning, the clip of her final words had millions of views, with hashtags like "Leavitt wins" and "Kimmel flops" trending. Pundits dissected the meltdown, some praising Leavitt's grace under fire, others slamming Kimmel's bullying tactics. Online, viewers called it a turning point, a moment when the media's playbook was exposed. Kimmel, shaken and humiliated, issued a half-hearted apology on social media, claiming he'd gotten heated, but standing by his views. It did little to stem the backlash. Leavitt, meanwhile, appeared on a morning show, calm and confident, reiterating her defense of Trump and the American people. "I didn't go on Kimmel's show to fight," she said. "I went to speak truth. And I'd do it again." Her words resonated, cementing her as a fearless voice. For Kimmel, the night was a stain on his reputation, a reminder that underestimating an opponent could cost dearly. For Leavitt, it was a triumph, proof that courage and conviction could turn the tables. The showdown was over, but its echoes would linger, a testament to a young woman who faced a giant and walked away victorious.